Yes, so I've read a few books about how people interacted with different cultures, and I've interviewed people about working with different cultures. I would say a great book to read on those specific things is by Erin Mayer. It's called The Cultural Map, and that's a great book about 8 scales of differences. For example, communication style, how you decide, how you persuade others. It's a really good book.
That's super interesting. I'm going to give it a read. And like, for example, what's an example that was very interesting that you find in the book that you liked very much?
Um, it, there's this one example, and it actually references a different presentation, and it was given by David Foster Wallace, and I can't quite recall each of the individual words to the story, but
Yeah, no,
basically
doesn't matter. Just the idea, the concept that you found fascinating.
yes. So there are 2 young fish who swim upstream, and another older fish comes the other way and says, "Good morning, boys. How's the water?" And the 2 younger fish look at each other, and one of them goes, what the hell is water? So that just illustrates how we sometimes don't understand how we're living in our own cultural bubble, and how we actually perceive things, generate ideas, is all from our past experiences. So if we have only experiences of our culture, then we're only going to form ideas surrounding that. So it's a really important thing, for example, when people talk about innovation, is that you need to have a diverse team. And that's because if you have a diverse team, people can behave like they would. They don't try and conform as much to the group consensus. So actually more ideas and more creative ideas are generated.
That's super fascinating. Wow. And I noticed when you were talking about this, I noticed the difference when I was a teenager. I had various group of friends, no? And there were these big groups I will hang out with. And something very interesting was I grew up mostly in Milan since I was 6 years old, no? So that's why the strong Italian accent. But the thing I noticed was these big groups, and they were the classical Italian. Mostly of them were like grew up in Milan from parents who grew up in Milan, or like always Italianish. So groups with Italians. And I noticed these groups were all dressed kind of alike, because you know, when you're a teenager, you want to fit in. So one group had all the Fred Perry and I don't know, those kind of brands, like a bit fancy. The other group was all about disco, and they were wearing glasses even in rainy days, like shades, and they had super colorful thing. And the other one was more like sportive, the other one was more like hip hop, rap, and then there was one group which was from a part of town which had a very much international people living there, because basically was a small town where there was a television channel. And what happened is that these people were Americans, Africans, Asian, Italians, English, German, from all over the world. And the thing I noticed is this group was much more easier to fit in, because even nowadays, because I'm still friends with this group, even nowadays, everybody's dressed alike. Sorry, I meant the opposite. Everybody's dressed totally different. There is the guy which loves heavy metal, so he dressed with black leather and stuff. The guy that dressed like a surfer, and the one who dressed like all elegant, and they all fit in. It's because they never try to fit in and homologate. They fit in, but without homologation. So it's very varied and is multicultural, and it's so interesting to hang out with these friends, even if most of them are Italian, but they had so much influence from you are okay as you are. You don't need to fit into a group. And me feeling always a bit out of place with them, I never feel out of place, no? Because when my other friends talk about things, they always talk about things that happen in their area, and they have such a much different life from me, which is fine, but that group is much more close to home, no? And it's the same thing, I think, when you hire a team, if you want diversity, you should hire diversity, so they will all think differently. So that's a very good point.
But yes, I find that really interesting how you also said how you fit in better, because there's no like group consensus, but still people get along, and I sometimes feel that they get along better because there's not this one standard how you need to behave or what you need to say.
Exactly, no guidelines. Some
Exactly.
people are full of tattoos, some hate tattoos, but they just hang out together. It's amazing. You said something about before, and the coordinate bilingual. You say that you are a coordinate bilingual, but there are the two types, and you can approach the client with knowing, once you know their own cultural system, you relate to them. How do you spot which type a person is? It's like, do you have a way to ask them like how long I've been bicultural, or is something you can hear from what they say, I don't know.
Yes, and so it doesn't really matter which one you are. It more matters about how you generate ideas. So if someone is bilingual from like birth and grows up like that, then all their ideas come into one. So the way they have a one way of thinking, which is their own, which most people have. But with the coordinate bilingual, so if you learn it in different contexts, you can just remember other experiences that you've had in that culture. For example, that statue example that I gave. But if someone's translating it as an adult through another language, then they only have the vocabulary of that first language to influence what they're thinking in the second language. Because what vocabulary we have and kind of what idioms we use really influences of how we think. So if that person thinks in that first language and it's culturally acceptable to say certain things, then they might try and replicate that in the other language, but it might not be as culturally acceptable, or people don't understand the idiom.
That happens a lot with jokes, when people try to translate some jokes from Italian to English or vice versa, and they just don't work.
Certainly, but also I think that's sometimes what happens in in-house teams when they learn for example English, and they're based in Germany, and they say, well, I can speak English quite well and I can design this marketing campaign, but they've never actually been in the English the British business environment, so they don't actually know how people behave. It's almost creating a concept before you've done your own market research.
I see. That's very clever, but still you can always deliver amazing results, because I read your feedback on your website and they're all raving fans.
Oh, thank you so much.
And I guess this is because you understand people from different aspects. You are bicultural, and on top of that you have the curiosity to understand more on how we all work. And you come across as someone very observant, that when you're in a group you see, okay, this is acceptable, this is not, and you always are very thoughtful, which can help you to understand what a client needs. Once they tell you which clients they want to aim for and who they are, I guess you can do a good balance, right?
Yes, that's right. And also it's really important to ask lots of questions, because if you don't ask a lot of questions, then you're kind of assuming things that you know from your own experiences, but they might be experiences that are right for that situation, but the client might know other things that work. So it's basically delivering the right marketing message visually, which is really important, but also the right copy about what you want to achieve.
Yes, that's very true. The therapist, I know for sure, I learned for sure that when somebody tells you something, always ask questions, because we tend to filter with our own experience and knowledge, and the person's like, no, it's nothing like that, because we think I will feel like that if this will have happened to me, but they don't, because they are not you. So everybody has his own filters and experiences, so it's always good to make questions and don't give things for granted, because we are all different, and if you want to deliver a good result that the client is happy, it's very important that you ask a lot of questions and we listen to them.
Definitely.
Yeah, and then I guess sometimes there is a bit of interpretation on intuition on what the client is trying to tell us, because we kind of know, like for example, when I wanted my website, I kind of knew how I wanted to look like, but I didn't had no clue where to put what. So it's like, I don't know, just make it happen. And the person was like, what do you want? Where do you, which, and I was like, I don't know, it just needs to look like this, and I don't know. So it's complicated, because if it's something like, for me, design of a website is out of my depth. Like, I don't know that thing, and I kind of know what the final result, but I really don't know. So I need some guidance to get like, okay, and the right questions, and then I guess I can get, yeah, that's my website. It's even better than I dreamed of. I was like, that would be amazing, no?
Definitely. And also I think it's about trusting the creative to deliver solutions to your problem, and also that you recognize your brand within whatever they've produced. So your brand isn't just like graphics, it's also like the brand values, what you stand for, how you communicate, what you say, what you don't say. So it just goes so much beyond just the logo.
Yes. Do you ever find clients who try to micromanage you? Like, because what I learned for experience is always hire people that are smarter than you to do the things they know how to do. So it's like accountant, hire somebody who knows accountants more than I do, and in the video maker, blah, blah, blah. So always find somebody who knows better than you, no? But I noticed that sometimes some people with my friends who work into, like in the design industry, for example, you have these clients that try to micromanage. How do you have any tips when you get a client like that?
I would assess their maturity as a business owner, because like you say, I tend to find people who are quite mature as business owners, and it doesn't mean how long you've been in business for. It's about how self-aware they are and how problem aware they are. If they're very problem aware, they understand that actually their thinking hasn't solved their problem. So they understand that actually they need to take a step back and perhaps suggest things. Whilst people who micromanage have probably just heard that they probably need this, and they still believe that their thinking is going to solve their issue.
Yes, makes total sense. So who do you work with the most? Which are your clients you work usually? I know for sure you work with social enterprise, startup, engineering, small, medium business, council, and global think tank. So anyone else? Did I forget somebody?
Basically, people who want to deliver a social change, and I help them implement that through design. Because if you want to implement social change, you have to have a brand or a message that's really recognizable, so people can relate to it and continue the movement. So that's who I'd love to speak to.
Awesome. Because as a reminder, you don't only work with German-speaking people, you also work with every kind of culture. It's just anybody who needs your services, and you can figure out